The Last Touch, a testimony about Blessed Carlo Acutis. My name is Matteo Ferri, and I'm 34 years old. I live in Monza, just steps from the park, in a small but bright apartment that I share with my wife Elena and our two children, Luca, who is 6, and Chiara, who is 4. I work as a freelance graphic designer, mainly for small businesses in Brianza. Logo design, websites, brochures, everything needed to make a business known in an increasingly digital world. Every morning, when I open my eyes and see the sunlight filtering through the bedroom curtains, the first thing I do, even before getting up, even before checking my phone, is give thanks. I give thanks for the chronic back pain that has accompanied me for years, because that pain reminds me that I'm alive. I give thanks for the coffee my wife makes with the mocha pot, the strong and bitter kind that really wakes me up and that I drink standing, leaning against the kitchen counter while the kids fight over the cereal box. I give thanks for the traffic on the Vallecina when I take the kids to daycare, for the endless lines that make me curse inside but that mean I have somewhere to go, a family to support, a life to live. I give thanks for my wife who grumbles because I've forgotten again to take out the trash, for the bills that pile up on the kitchen table, for the toys scattered everywhere in the house, for the drawings my daughter sticks on all the walls with tape that ruins the paint. I give thanks for everything, even for the things that make me angry, even for worries, even for sleepless nights when work is scarce and I wonder how I'll pay the mortgage next month. I give thanks because 18 years ago, in October 2006, I learned a lesson that I carry in my heart every single day and that I will never forget until my last breath. Life is an incredible gift, precious, miraculous, even when it hurts, even when it breaks you, even when it brings you to your knees and seems to take everything away, even when you think it's about to end before the eyes of a frightened kid in a hospital bed. 18 years ago, I was 16 and I thought I knew everything about life. I thought I was immortal, indestructible, invincible, like all kids my age, like all those who have never looked death in the eye and think it's something distant that only concerns the old, only others, never them. Life, for me then, was that wonderful and mundane thing that happened between a soccer game at the San Gerardo Oratory Field and a math assignment copied at the last minute from my best friend, Davide Martinelli, who was a genius with numbers and always saved me when a test was approaching and I hadn't studied anything. I was attending the 3rd year at the Frisi Scientific High School, the historic one in downtown Monza, with high ceilings and worn desks where generations of students had carved names, pierced hearts, curse words, and mathematical formulas. I hated physics with visceral passion, found Professor Galli boring and monotonous, regularly fell asleep during her lessons on uniform rectilinear motion. I loved instead the hours of technical drawing with Professor Rhoda, a retired old architect who taught us to use squares, compasses, drafting machines to see beauty in geometric precision. I spent afternoons playing PlayStation 2 in my bedroom on the 3rd floor, the one with walls plastered with Linkin Park and Inter posters, the one that perpetually smelled of dirty socks accumulated under the bed and Axe deodorant sprayed too abundantly in the desperate adolescent attempt to seem older, more interesting, more attractive. I played Pro Evolution Soccer for hours, challenging friends online, yelling at the TV when I conceded goals, celebrating like crazy when I scored. I had the right friends, the kind of friends you have at 16 and naively believe will be in your life forever, those with whom you share everything, from sandwiches stolen from the cafeteria to nighttime confidences, first loves, first disappointments, first impossible dreams. There was Davide, my best friend since San Giuseppe kindergarten, the one with whom I had shared 20 years of life, from the sandbox at 3 to school desks, the one who lent me math and physics homework and with whom I shared everything, absolutely everything, without secrets. There was Marco Sala, the craziest in the group, always ready to do any crazy thing, the one who organized the evenings, who knew everyone in Monza and surroundings, who always managed to get us tickets for concerts in Milan, even the sold-out ones. There was Simone Bianchi, the calmest and most reflective, the one who listened when you needed to talk, who didn't talk much, but when he opened his mouth always said the right thing at the right time, the one who always had hidden wisdom behind his shy smile. And then there was her, Sarah Colombo, the girl from 2nd A, the one with brown hair down to her shoulders, always tied in a ponytail, and green eyes that when they looked at me made me literally forget how to breathe. She was the most beautiful in school, in my opinion, but not in a vulgar and obvious way. She was beautiful in a different way, deeper. She had a smile that lit up the hallways, a contagious laugh you could hear 3 classrooms away, a way of speaking that made you feel important, heard, seen. I spent endless hours on MSN Messenger chatting with her, carefully choosing every word, deleting and rewriting the same sentence 1,000 times, desperately trying to seem interesting, funny, intelligent, mature. I sent her songs I thought she would like, told her plots of movies I watched, asked her for help with Italian homework even when I didn't need it, just to have an excuse to talk to her. I hadn't yet asked her out, I didn't have the courage, but I was building it day by day, chat after chat. I was 16, had life ahead of me, all the time in the world. Or at least, that's what I believed in my stupid adolescent optimism. My family was normal, ordinary in the most beautiful and reassuring sense of the term. My father, Roberto Ferri, worked as an administrative clerk in an import-export company in Sesto San Giovanni, one of those gray and anonymous companies where he spent 8 hours a day in front of a computer entering data in Excel sheets, answering emails, having endless meetings about things I didn't understand. He left early every morning at 6:30, took the regional train from Monza station, came home tired and drained every evening at 7, but always found the time and energy to ask me how school was going, even though my answers were always vague, curt, annoyed. Fine, Dad, as always. My mother, Luisa Farine Colombo, was an Italian and history teacher at Bologna Middle School in Monza, that new school near the train station. She was the type of teacher everyone remembers, strict but fair, demanding but capable of making you love literature even if you hated reading. At home instead, she was simply Mom, the one who prepared dinner every evening, who washed and ironed my clothes even when I was more than capable of doing it myself, who insisted on knowing everything about my life, who I hung out with, where I went, what I did, who I chatted with on the internet. At the time, I found her invasive, oppressive, suffocating. Today, I regret every single day not having told her often enough how much I loved her, how grateful I was for everything she did. We had a small but happy life, without great dramas, without riches, but without deprivations. Dinners together in the evening around the kitchen table, always at the same time, always with the same reassuring habits. The 8 o'clock news that my father religiously watched while we ate, commenting on politics, complaining about taxes, worrying about the country's future. My mother knitting on the couch while watching some fiction on Rai Uno, her hands moving automatically, creating scarves and sweaters that no one would ever wear, but that she continued to make for pure pleasure. Me closing myself in my room as soon as dinner was over, pretending to study but actually talking on the cell phone with friends until the battery died, or playing online until late at night, until my mother yelled from the hallway that it was time to sleep. Thursday evening soccer was sacred, untouchable, the most important thing of the week. We met at the San Gerardo Oratory Field, always the same 8 or 10 guys, always with the same passion and enthusiasm, whether it rained or was cold or there were exams the next day. I played as a midfielder. I wasn't the most skilled technically, but I gave it my all, ran up and down the field for 90 minutes, sweated, yelled, had fun like I didn't have fun anywhere else. After the game, we all went to McDonald's on Via Libertà, ordered mountains of burgers and fries, laughed, joked, replayed all the game actions, discussed real soccer, who would win the championship that year. Those were my perfect Thursdays. I didn't know, couldn't imagine that soon I would give anything to have another normal Thursday, any Thursday made of soccer and burgers and stupid laughs with friends. It was in June, towards the end of school, that everything began. At first it was just a discomfort in the right knee, a small thing, insignificant, that I ignored for weeks. I thought it was from soccer, maybe a blow taken in a clash and forgotten, maybe some juvenile arthritis, something passing. I put ice on it in the evening, took a Brufen now and then, and went on normally. But the pain didn't go away. On the contrary, it got worse, slowly but inexorably, day after day. My mother, with that maternal instinct that never fails, told me to go to the doctor, but I minimized, said it was nothing, that it would go away on its own. My father, with that typical old-fashioned male mentality, told me I was a wimp, that in his day they played even with broken bones, that all you had to do was grit your teeth and move on. And I, stupidly, believed him. I gritted my teeth. I moved on. I pretended everything was normal, but it wasn't. By July, the pain had become constant, excruciating, unbearable. It was no longer a discomfort. It was a red-hot nail driven into the bone, a burning that gave me no respite neither day nor night. At night, it was worse, when I was alone in my dark room, when I could no longer pretend. I squeezed the pillow and bit the sheet to avoid screaming, to avoid waking my parents, to avoid admitting that there really was something wrong. I could no longer walk well. I limped visibly, dragged my right leg, had to lean on walls in school hallways. My classmates began to make fun of me, at first jokingly, then with a cruelty typical of adolescence. "Fairy, what's wrong? Are you 100 years old? Need a cane? Want us to call a wheelchair?" I felt humiliated, angry with them, but especially with myself, but more than anything, I was scared. There was a voice inside me, louder and louder, whispering that it wasn't normal, that a 16-year-old shouldn't feel so much pain, that something bad was happening, something really bad. It was my mother who forced me to the doctor. One Monday morning in July, she literally dragged me to Dr. Pacina's office, our family doctor forever, the one who had treated me for all childhood illnesses, from chickenpox to tonsillitis. He examined me carefully, touched the knee, bent it, stretched it, asked questions about the pain, when it started, how it changed. I saw his expression change as he examined me, saw something in his eyes that I didn't like at all. "Let's do an X-ray," he said with a voice too serious, too controlled. "Tomorrow, at San Gerardo Hospital, just to be safe." The way he said it, that "just to be safe," said with a voice that betrayed concern, made me understand he had seen something, felt something, that he didn't like at all. The X-ray was done the next day. I remember the X-ray technician, an elderly man with thick glasses who made me lie on the cold bed, who positioned the knee in strange and painful ways, who clicked with the machine several times. I remember that he looked at the images on the monitor for a long time, that he called a colleague, that they spoke in low voices pointing at something on the screen. I remember the look they exchanged, a look that said everything. The report arrived after 2 endless days. Dr. Pacina called my mother on the phone and asked her to come to the office, with me, with my father. When a doctor calls you and says to come with the whole family, it's never good news. I knew that too. At 16, without experience, I knew it deep in my bones. It was there, in that office I had known since I was a child, sitting between my mother and father, that I heard for the first time the word that would change my life. "There's a mass," said Dr. Pacina, looking at the report without looking us in the eyes. "In the femur, near the knee. A consistent mass with characteristics that worry us." "What does mass mean?" asked my father with a hoarse voice. The doctor hesitated, then said what we had all already understood. "It could be a tumor. We need to do more tests, an MRI, a biopsy. But the radiological characteristics suggest an osteosarcoma." Osteosarcoma. I didn't know what it was, but the word sounded terrible, final, like a sentence. My mother began to cry silently. My father remained motionless, petrified. I felt nothing. It was as if my brain had shut down, as if it couldn't process the information. A tumor. Cancer. At 16. Impossible. But it wasn't. The subsequent tests, done quickly, urgently, confirmed the diagnosis. Osteosarcoma, a malignant bone tumor. Grade 3, the most aggressive. And the worst news, it had already spread. Metastases to the lungs. Microscopic, still small, but they were there. The cancer had begun to travel through my body, to conquer territory, to prepare to kill me. I remember the face of Dr. Valenti, the oncologist at San Gerardo, when he gave us the complete diagnosis. He was young, maybe 35, with kind but tired eyes. He received us in his office, a small room with white walls, anatomy posters, family photos on the desk. He spoke calmly, with brutal honesty that I later appreciated, but that at the moment seemed cruel. "It's a serious situation," he said without mincing words. "Osteosarcoma is an aggressive tumor, and the fact that it has already metastasized complicates things. But it's not a death sentence. We have an aggressive chemotherapy protocol that has shown good results. Preoperative chemotherapy to reduce the tumor, then surgery to remove the mass, then postoperative chemotherapy. It's a long, difficult, painful journey, but it's the only chance." "What are his chances?" asked my father with a trembling voice. The doctor hesitated. "With lung metastases, 5-year survival is around 30%. But Matteo is young, strong. He has better chances than an adult. 30%. I heard that number echo in my head. 30% to live, 70% to die. And I had always been pessimistic with statistics, had always been part of the unlucky group, the one who catches the flu even when everyone else is fine. the one who loses the lottery even when he has 100 tickets. My mother asked how long it took when they could start. The doctor replied that they had to start immediately as soon as possible. Every day counted. Every day of delay gave the cancer more time to grow, to spread, to kill. And so hell began. August and September 2006 were months that even today I struggle to remember without feeling vomit rising in my throat. Chemotherapy was worse than anything I had imagined. I watched movies, TV series, thought I knew what it meant. I knew nothing. The first cycle began at the end of July. They hospitalized me for 3 days, attached IVs and bags full of liquids that looked like water but were actually very powerful poisons designed to kill cells that grew quickly. The problem is they killed all cells that grew quickly, not just tumor cells. Hair, stomach cells, blood cells, everything. My hair fell out in less than 2 weeks, not gradually, in clumps. I would wake up and the pillow was covered with hair. I would shower and the drain would clog. I would run my hand over my head and an entire handful would come off. Finally, in mid-August, I asked my father to shave me to 0. I didn't want to see my hair fall anymore, didn't want that gradual loss. I wanted to control at least that. I looked at myself in the mirror after my father had finished and saw a stranger, a pale boy, swollen from cortisone, with eyes too big for the emaciated face, without eyebrows, without eyelashes. I looked like a sick person. I looked like someone who was dying, and maybe I was. The vomiting was constant. I vomited after every meal, vomited when I hadn't eaten anything, vomited yellow and bitter bile that burned my throat. They had given anti-nausea drugs, but they didn't help much. I was losing weight rapidly, was always tired, always weak. Getting out of bed was immense fatigue, taking a shower an impossible feat. Most of the time I spent lying down, looking at the ceiling, wondering if it was worth continuing to fight. Friends came to visit me at first. Davide came every day for the first 2 weeks, sat on the bed, told me what was happening outside, who had kissed whom, which parties we had missed. But even with him, I didn't know what to say. How do you explain what it means to be 16 and know you probably won't be 17? Marco and Simone came a few times, brought pizza I couldn't eat, video games I couldn't play. Sarah sent a very sweet message on MSN, saying she was praying for me, that she knew I would make it. I didn't reply. What could I say? As the weeks passed, visits became less frequent. I didn't blame them. I myself wouldn't have known what to say to a dying friend. It's easier to forget, to move on, to pretend it's not happening. Life goes on for those who are healthy, and I was no longer part of that world. My mother slept on a folding chair next to my bed every night I spent in the hospital. I heard her cry softly when she thought I was sleeping, heard her muffled sobs in the dark. My father came after work, every single day, sat on the chair on the other side of the bed, watched TV without really seeing it, and every now and then squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. But that pain was good. It was alive. It was love. We never talked about what was happening, never about the possibility that I might not make it. It was as if, by not naming it, we could keep it away, could cheat fate. But the cancer didn't go away. It wasn't responding to chemotherapy as they hoped. The tumor in the femur was only slightly reducing. The metastases in the lungs remained stable but weren't decreasing. Dr. Valenti talked about experimental protocols, new therapies, increasing dosages. But I saw in his eyes that he wasn't optimistic, saw that he was doing his job but didn't really believe I would make it to Christmas. One evening in late September, while I was alone in the room, I heard the doctor talking to my parents in the hallway. The door was ajar, their voices came through clearly. "He's not responding as I hoped," Dr. Valenti was saying. "The tumor is resistant. We can continue with another cycle, but honestly, I don't know if it's worth insisting on aggressive therapies. Maybe it's time to think about palliative care, to focus on the quality of life he has left." "How long?" asked my father, his voice broken. "How much time does he have?" A very long pause. Then, "Months, maybe weeks. I'm sorry. We've done everything possible." I closed my eyes and let the tears flow. I didn't scream, didn't get agitated. I cried silently, deeply, while those words echoed in my head. Months, weeks. It was over. At 16, my life was over. That night I cried like I had never cried in my life. Violent, desperate sobs that shook my whole body, that hurt my chest, that took my breath away. I was 16. I hadn't yet really kissed Sarah, hadn't even told her I liked her. I hadn't gotten my driver's license, hadn't traveled, hadn't done anything I dreamed of doing, and I would spend the last days of my life in a hospital bed, bald, weak, vomiting, surrounded by beeping machines and tubes and bags of liquids and the smell of disinfectant that I now hated with all my soul. I didn't believe in God. I had never really believed. My parents were Catholics in a superficial way, on paper, by family tradition. We went to Mass at Christmas and Easter, more out of habit than faith. I found it all ridiculous, useless. Fairy tales for little children who can't accept that death is the end, nothingness. And now, facing my death, I didn't even have that consolation. No heaven waiting for me, no meaning in what was happening, no loving God who had a plan. Just nothingness, darkness, absolute end, an immense rage against an indifferent universe that was tearing away my life before I had even lived it. On October 1st, the situation precipitated. Waking up had become difficult. Nurses had to call me several times. The fever rose to 40 degrees Celsius and didn't come down even with the strongest antipyretics. My lungs began to fill with fluid. Breathing became increasingly difficult. It was like drowning slowly, like having an enormous weight on my chest. I coughed continuously, a dry and painful cough that cracked my ribs. They transferred me to intensive care. The rooms there were different, smaller, more isolated, with fewer windows, less light. Each room had 2 beds separated by a light green curtain that didn't really isolate anything, neither the sounds nor the smells of illness and death. There were machines everywhere, monitors beeping constantly, tubes and wires and bags hanging from metal poles. The air had a particular smell, a mix of industrial disinfectant and that indefinable thing that is the smell of approaching end. It sounds dramatic, but it's true. When you're so close to death, the body begins to smell differently, begins to decompose already while you're still alive. For the first days, from the 1st to the 8th of October, I was alone in that room. Or rather, alone with the nurses who came in every hour to check vital parameters, to change the bags, to record numbers on medical charts I no longer read. Alone with the doctors who came in early in the morning during rounds, who consulted in low voices at the foot of the bed, who used technical words I didn't understand but whose terrible meaning I intuited. Alone with my mother who never left me, not even to go to the bathroom, who slept on that uncomfortable chair, who held my hand for hours, who sang softly songs she sang to me when I was little. My father came in the evening after work, had asked to reduce his hours but couldn't afford to quit completely. He sat on the other side of the bed, looked at me, and in his eyes I saw his broken heart, saw a man who would have given anything, even his own life, to save his sons. But he couldn't. No one could. There was nothing to do but wait. On October 9th, around 7 in the evening, while the light outside the small window was fading and the ward was preparing for the night, they brought someone to the other bed in my room. I heard agitated voices in the hallway, the sound of a stretcher being pushed quickly, doctors giving quick and precise orders with urgent tone. My mother left the room to make space, and I, from my bed, tried to lift my head a little, to turn my neck to see through the curtain what was happening. I glimpsed a boy, also young, maybe even younger than me, very pale, almost transparent, supported by an elegant woman who was crying desperately, and a tall man who was speaking rapidly on his cell phone with a voice broken by emotion. Fulminant leukemia, I heard a nurse I knew, Laura, tell a colleague outside the door. M3, acute. He deteriorated in just a few days. The boy was fine until a week ago. I don't know if he'll make it. Platelets are rock bottom. He had a hemorrhage. I turned toward the white wall. Perfect. Another boy who is dying. Maybe he was 16 too. Maybe he was also saying goodbye to life too soon. At least I wouldn't be alone in this shit. At least I would have company on the journey to nothingness. That night I didn't sleep. Neither did he, the boy on the other side of the green curtain. I heard him breathing with difficulty, every breath a labored wheeze. I heard him cough, moan softly in pain. But then, around 3 in the morning, when the entire ward was silent and dark, I heard his voice, weak but clear, full of tenderness that surprised me. Mom, don't be afraid. Everything will be all right. I'm not afraid. I was surprised, shocked. Was he consoling his mother? He who was dying was trying to reassure her? I spent all my time cursing everything and everyone, hating the world, closing myself in my rage and despair. And this unknown boy, this boy who was facing the exact same shitty situation, found the strength, the love, the generosity to console his mother. What kind of person was he? The next morning, October 10th, When the nurses opened the green curtain for morning medications and to change sheets, I saw him for the first time, really. Not just an indistinct shadow, but a face. A person. He was maybe 15, no more. Dark curly hair, very short, but not shaved to zero like mine. He was thin, terribly thin, pale as a sheet, with large, dark, intelligent, and alive eyes that seemed too big for the emaciated face consumed by illness. He had bruises everywhere, on his arms, on his neck, signs of internal hemorrhaging and very low platelets. But what struck me, what literally left me speechless, wasn't his physical appearance, it was his smile. Despite the pain that must have been atrocious, despite the tubes entering his nose and mouth, despite all the machines around him beeping constantly, he looked at me and smiled. A real, authentic, luminous smile. "Hi," he said simply, with a hoarse but kind voice. "My name is Carlo." "Matteo," I replied, surprised that he had the energy, the desire to talk to a stranger. "You here for vacation too?" he said, with an ironic but not bitter, not cynical tone. I couldn't help but laugh, even though it hurt to laugh, even though every movement of the diaphragm was painful. "Yeah, the San Gerardo, famous 5-star resort. Did you see what excellent service?" He laughed, a weak laugh interrupted by a cough, but real. His mother, the elegant woman I had glimpsed the night before, looked at me through tears and smiled too, a sad but grateful smile. "Carlo always finds a way to joke," she said with a voice broken by emotion. "Even now." "There's no reason to be sad, Mom," said Carlo with a sweetness that broke my heart. Really, I didn't understand. How could he not be sad? How could he joke, smile, console his mother when he was dying? I was only rage, only despair, only hatred for everything, and this boy was light. There's no other way to describe it. The following days, that 10th and that 11th of October, were strange, surreal, incredible. Having someone in the room changed everything for me. I was no longer alone with my dark thoughts, with my poisonous rage, with my paralyzing fear. Carlo spoke little because he was very weak. Every word cost him effort. But when he spoke, he said things that made me reflect, that shook me, that opened cracks in the wall of cynicism and despair I had built around my heart. The afternoon of October 10th, while the nurses had gone out and our mothers had gone to get coffee from the vending machine in the hallway, I asked him point blank, without beating around the bush, "Aren't you afraid?" He turned toward me slowly, and in his eyes I saw something I couldn't decipher, understand. Peace, perhaps, or acceptance, or something even deeper. "Of death?" he asked. "Yes." "No," he said simply without hesitation. "I'm not afraid." "How do you do it?" I just couldn't understand. I was terrified every second. Every breath could be the last. Every heartbeat could stop. Fear was devouring me alive. "How can you not be afraid of dying?" "Because I believe in Jesus," he said without embarrassment, without shame, as if it were the most normal and obvious thing in the world. "I believe in the Eucharist, in the real presence of Christ in the bread and wine. And I know that this," he indicated his sick body, that fragile shell that contained him, "is only temporary. The body is temporary. The soul is eternal." I looked at him as if he were completely crazy. "But we're dying. Soon, maybe days, maybe hours, there will be nothing left. How can you believe in all this? How can you believe there's something after?" He looked at me with those big, deep eyes and said something that stayed imprinted in my mind, engraved in my heart, forever. "Matteo, the body dies. It's true. I can't deny it. But if you have Jesus inside you, in your soul, in your life, then you never really die. You just change form, that's all. Like a caterpillar that becomes a butterfly. The caterpillar dies, but the butterfly lives. And the butterfly is more beautiful, more free, more real than the caterpillar." "I don't believe in these things," I said, perhaps too abruptly, with too much harshness. "Sorry, but I don't believe it. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in the soul. I don't believe in heaven. I believe that when we die, we end. That's it. Black. Nothing. That's okay," he said. And in his voice there was no judgment, no condemnation, not even pity, only acceptance. "I understand. But maybe sooner or later you'll believe. You never know. God has strange ways of making himself known." That conversation disturbed me deeply, stayed with me for hours. How could he be so serene, so at peace with the idea of dying? I was full of blind rage, Poisonous resentment toward a God I didn't even believe in, toward a cruel and unjust universe. And he who believed, who had faith, was facing the exact same thing with a peace, a serenity, and almost joy that seemed impossible, superhuman to me. The next day, October 11th, a priest came. It was early morning, maybe 8. I was sleeping, or pretending to sleep, I don't remember well. But I heard everything. I heard the door open slowly, heard light footsteps, heard Carlo's voice saying, "Father, thank you for coming." The priest, an elderly man with a kind voice, replied, "Carlo, my son, I'm here. Do you want to receive the anointing of the sick?" "Yes," said Carlo with a weak but firm, determined voice. "I want to prepare myself. I want to be ready." And so, there, a few meters from me, while I kept my eyes closed and pretended to sleep but listened to every single word, Carlo received the sacrament of the sick, what was once called extreme unction, what is given to those who are about to die. I heard the priest praying in Latin, reciting ancient formulas, heard the blessed oil being spread on Carlo's forehead, on his hands. I heard Carlo responding to prayers with an increasingly weak voice. I heard his mother crying silently, his father perhaps praying too. When the priest finished and left the room quietly, Carlo remained silent for a while, maybe 10 minutes. Then he called me. "Matteo, are you awake?" I opened my eyes. Pointless to pretend. "Yes." "Thanks for not laughing," he said. "Why would I have laughed?" I asked, sincerely confused. "Many laugh. Many think praying is useless when you're dying, that it's just a way to delude yourself. But for me, it's everything. It's the only thing that really matters." "Why did you ask for that sacrament?" I asked. Genuinely curious, I really wanted to understand. "Why that oil? Those prayers? What do they give you?" "They prepare me. It's like packing your suitcase before a long journey. I know where I'm going, and I want to arrive prepared, clean, ready. The anointing gives me strength, gives me peace. It reminds me that I'm not alone, that Jesus is with me, that Our Lady guides me. It was a way of seeing things, death, the end, that I had never considered, that I had never even imagined was possible. For me, death was nothingness, absolute end, primordial terror. For him, it was a journey towards something, towards someone. A journey that didn't frighten him, but that almost in some absurd way filled him with hope and joy. "I wish I could believe like you," I said, and it was the first time I admitted it out loud, that I admitted it even to myself. "I wish I had your peace, but I can't." "You don't have to force it," said Carlo. "Faith is not something you force. It's a gift. Ask, and it will be given to you. Knock, and it will be opened to you." Those are Jesus' words in the gospel. Ask to believe, Matteo. Ask with a sincere heart, and you'll see that something will change. That evening, Carlo deteriorated drastically. Around 8, the fever rose again, over 41 degrees Celsius. He began to shake violently, his teeth chattered, he sweated profusely. Doctors came in and out continuously with increasingly grim faces. His mother didn't stop crying, holding her son's hand, praying the rosary out loud. His father stood in a corner of the room with his hands clasped, praying too, his lips moving silently. I heard the doctors say he had a cerebral hemorrhage, that platelets were almost at 0, that there was nothing more to be done. I heard someone say, "Maybe tonight." Around 8:30, while outside it was completely dark, Carlo called me with a very faint voice. "Matteo." I turned. I looked at him. He was pale as a corpse, sweating, trembling, but his eyes were still lucid, still aware, still full of that strange light. "Matteo," he said again with a broken voice. "Come here, please." "I can't get up," I said. "I was attached to a million tubes, to monitors, to bags. I can't move. Just come closer. Just your hand. Please." His mother looked at me through tears. My mother, who had just returned, looked at me too. Both nodded, a nod that said, "Do it. It's important." Slowly, with an effort that cost me all the energy I had, I moved on the bed, slid toward the edge, stretched out my right arm toward him. Our beds were close, separated perhaps by a meter, maybe a meter and a half. I strained, I stretched, ignored the pain. Carlo stretched out his hand, that thin, pale hand of a 15-year-old boy that seemed transparent in the light of the monitors, and touched mine. Not a strong grip. His fingers had no more strength. Just a touch, his trembling fingers on mine. And in that touch, I felt something. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how to find the right words. It wasn't something physical, or maybe it was, I don't know. It was something deeper, something that passed from him to me through that simple contact. Warmth, but not just physical warmth. Love, hope, life. Matteo, he said, and his voice was a broken whisper. The words cost him immense effort, but he wanted to say them, had to say them. Don't give up. Never give up to despair. There is more, there is much more than what we see with these eyes. I promise you there is something after this life, something beautiful, infinite. And whatever happens to me, whatever happens to you, we are in God's hands, in the good hands of a Father who loves us. His fingers were cold, trembled uncontrollably. I looked into his eyes and saw that he was using his last forces, his last energies to tell me this. Not for himself, for me, for a stranger he had known only 2 days ago. Carlo, I said, and my voice broke. I'm so scared. I know, he said, squeezing just barely, very lightly my fingers with his. I'm scared too. I'm human, Matteo. I also have moments of fear, but I'm not alone, and neither are you. You are never alone, Matteo. Never. Even when you think you are, even when it seems everything is dark, you are not alone. Jesus is there. Our Lady is there. I will be there. Then, with a superhuman effort, he smiled. That incredible, impossible smile he had even in the most atrocious pain, in the darkest moment. And he said, with a voice that was little more than a breath, "See you on the other side, my friend. I'll wait for you. One day we'll see each other again, and it will be beautiful." Those were his last lucid words. An hour later, around 9:30, he went into a coma. A massive cerebral hemorrhage, the doctors said. Brain death declared shortly after. I heard his mother scream. A scream that still wakes me at night sometimes. A scream of pure, total, absolute pain. I heard his father calling his son's name again and again, as if he could bring him back with the force of his voice, with the force of love. "Carlo! Carlo! Come back! Don't go! Carlo!" I remained in my bed, paralyzed, unable to move, to think, to do anything. I watched that boy, that extraordinary boy I had known for only 2 days, lying motionless, already distant, already on that journey he had spoken of with such certainty. October 11th was the longest, heaviest, most painful day of my life. Carlo was there, in the bed next to mine, a meter away, kept alive by machines, by the respirator that pumped air into his lungs, by the heart that beat because drugs forced it to beat. But he was no longer there. He had already gone. His mother didn't move from his bedside for 24 hours, holding his cold hand, whispering prayers, lullabies from his childhood, memories of happy times. His father went in and out 1,000 times on the phone with distant relatives, with priests, with friends, organizing things I didn't want to know. I watched, just watched. And for the first time since I had been diagnosed with cancer, for the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about myself, about my pain, about my death. I was thinking about him, about Carlo, about that 15-year-old boy who was dying with more dignity, more faith, more love than anyone I had ever known, than anyone I had even imagined. That evening, my mother asked me softly, "Matteo, do you want us to ask to move you to another room? It must be difficult, terrible to be here." "No," I said immediately, without hesitation. "I want to stay. He shouldn't be alone. Even though he was in a coma, even though maybe he didn't feel anything anymore, even though maybe he was already on the other side in his heaven, I wanted to stay. I felt I owed it to him. He had given me something in those few days together, something immense, precious, something I had never had before. Hope. Not the hope of healing. I had lost that long ago. But the hope that maybe, just maybe, death wasn't the absolute end. The terrifying nothingness I imagined. The hope that maybe Carlo was right, that there really was something after. Something beautiful. At 6:45 in the morning on October 12th, Carlo died. I was awake. I was there. I heard the continuous flat sound of the heart monitor, that sound everyone knows, that you've heard 1,000 times on TV and in movies, but that in reality, when it happens a meter from you, is devastating, final, unbearable. His mother screamed again, an even louder, even more desperate scream. His father collapsed, literally collapsed on his knees next to the bed, hugging his son's body, sobbing like a child. The nurses ran inside, but there was nothing to be done. Carlo Acutis, 15 years old, was dead. I closed my eyes and cried. I cried for him, for his family, for the monstrous injustice of all this. I cried because that extraordinary boy had managed to show me something beautiful, something true, even in the midst of the horror of illness and death, and now he was gone. I cried because I had lost a friend, even though I had only known him 2 days. But while I was crying, while tears flowed on the pillow, I felt something strange, inexplicable. I don't know how to describe it. It was like a presence, warm, peaceful, loving, that suddenly filled the room. I'm not saying it was Carlo's soul. I'm not that mystical. I don't believe in these things. But there was something, a feeling I can't and will never be able to describe with words. As if the room were suddenly less heavy, less dark, less oppressive. As if there were light, even though the sunlight hadn't yet entered through the small window. And his touch came back to me, his cold hand on mine, his trembling fingers, his last words. "You are never alone, Matteo. Never. See you on the other side." They took Carlo's body away in the afternoon. His mother came to say goodbye to me before leaving, before following the coffin that was taking away her son. She was destroyed, obviously, eyes red and swollen, face pale, hands trembling. But she looked at me with incredible, inexplicable tenderness. "You were a friend to him in these last days," she said with a broken voice. "Thank you. Thank you for being here." "It was he who helped me," I said, and it was the purest truth I had ever said. He saved me, in a way. I don't know how to explain it. She nodded, as if she understood perfectly. Then she gave me something, a small holy card, one of those prayer cards given at funerals or first communions. "This was Carlo's," she said. "He always kept it with him, in his wallet. The image of Our Lady. He always prayed for others, even when he was sick, even when he was the one who needed prayers. I'm sure he prayed for you too. Keep it, and pray for him." I took the holy card with a trembling hand. It was an image of Our Lady, simple, colored. On the back was written a phrase, with the uncertain but legible handwriting of a young boy. "The Eucharist is my highway to heaven, Carlo." In the following days, something began to change in me. It wasn't instantaneous, it wasn't a sudden miracle. But Carlo's touch, his words, his impossible peace in the face of death, his smile in pain, had planted a small but living seed in my heart, hardened by rage and fear. I began to think differently. If he, so young, so sick, could face death with that serenity, with that almost joy, maybe there really was something I didn't see, something I was missing. Maybe the rage I felt, the total despair, weren't the only possible response to death. Maybe there was another way, a better way, a way full of hope instead of terror. One evening, maybe 3 or 4 days after Carlo's death, I asked my mother to call a priest. She looked at me surprised, shocked, as if I had asked her to take me to Mars. She knew I wasn't a believer, that I laughed at religion, that I found Mass boring and useless. "Are you sure?" she asked. "Yes. Please, Mom. I want to talk to a priest." A young hospital chaplain came, Father Marco Santini, maybe 30, with kind eyes and a warm smile. He sat next to my bed, didn't judge me, didn't try to convince me of anything. He listened to me. I told him everything about Carlo, about our meeting, about his words, about his touch, about his death. I told him I didn't know if I believed in God, but I wanted to try. I wanted to understand what gave that boy that impossible peace, that certainty of eternal life. "Faith is not absolute certainty," Father Marco told me with a calm voice. "It's not knowing with the mind. It's trusting with the heart. It's saying, I don't understand everything, I don't see everything, but I trust. I trust that there is meaning. I trust that there is a love greater than my pain, stronger than death itself." "Cool, what if there isn't?" I asked. "What if in the end I discover I was right, that after there's nothing? And what if there is?" He replied with a smile. "What do you lose in believing it, in trusting? At most, you die in peace like your friend Carlo, surrounded by love instead of rage. At worst, you live better the days you have left without being devoured by despair." It made sense. A strange sense, but it made sense. I began to pray. I didn't know how, didn't know formal prayers, the Our Fathers and Hail Marys. But I talked. I talked to God, to Jesus, to Carlo, To whoever was listening on the other side, I said everything I had inside, the fear that paralyzed me, the rage that burned me, but also the small, very small hope that Carlo had left me as inheritance. And slowly, very slowly, day by day, something changed. It wasn't that the pain disappeared, or that I suddenly believed blindly in everything, but there was a light, small but real, that began to shine in the darkness. A possibility that maybe, just maybe, Carlo was right. That maybe I wasn't alone. That maybe there really was something after. Weeks passed. Against all medical predictions, against all statistics, I didn't die. The cancer didn't miraculously regress, but it stabilized. The doctors were perplexed, confused. "We don't understand," Dr. Valenti said. "Your parameters should be much worse. Something has changed, but we don't know what. I don't know if it was prayer or medicine or chance or a mix of everything. But I was still alive. And every single day I woke up, the first thing I did was think of Carlo, of his touch, of his words, of his impossible smile. In November, they discharged me from the hospital. I returned home, weak, bald, skeletal, but alive. Chemotherapy continued, less aggressive but constant, twice a week. Christmas came and I was there, sitting at the table with my family, something the doctors had said was impossible just 2 months earlier. I looked for information about Carlo. I discovered who he really was. I discovered he was from Milan, that he had gone to the Marcelline schools, then to the Jesuits. I discovered he had created a website about Eucharistic miracles, that he loved technology and used it to evangelize. I discovered his body had been buried in Assisi as he had wanted, in the city of St. Francis he loved so much. I discovered he was a special, extraordinary boy, that even when he was alive, many considered him a saint. Everything I had seen in those 2 days in the hospital, his unshakable faith, his impossible peace, his generosity toward a stranger, was true. It wasn't a facade, it wasn't an illusion. It was who Carlo Acutis really was, in the depths of his soul. In January 2007, when I was strong enough to travel, I went to Assisi. I wanted to pray at his tomb. I wanted to thank him. I wanted to tell him he had been right. My mother came with me. We took the train to Perugia, and then the bus to Assisi. The tomb was simple in the small cemetery. I brought flowers, lit a candle, and talked to him as if he could hear me, as if he were there. "Carlo," I said softly, "thank you. Thank you for touching me. Thank you for showing me that there is hope even in the deepest darkness, even when everything seems over. I don't know if you hear me, I don't even know if this heaven you believed in really exists, but I want to believe it. I'm trying to believe it. For you. For me." Years passed. The miracle continued. The cancer went into remission, inexplicably, miraculously. The doctors didn't know how, had no scientific explanations. But I was healed. Not completely, I had permanent damage, chronic pains that would accompany me for my whole life, but I was alive. I finished high school late, a year late. Then I went to university, enrolled in graphic design. I met a girl, Elena, at the adult catechism course where I had started going regularly. I told her right away on the first date my story, about Carlo, about his touch, about how he had saved me. She cried and hugged me tight. We got married in 2015 after 3 years together. Our marriage was celebrated in the Church of Santa Maria Segreta in Milan, the same church where Carlo's funeral had been celebrated in 2006. I wanted him to be part of that special moment, even if he wasn't there physically. I felt he was there, somehow smiling, blessing us. In 2020, something incredible happened. Carlo was beatified. The church officially recognized him as blessed, one step before sainthood. Elena and I went to Assisi for the ceremony. We brought our son Luca, who was just 1 year old. I cried the whole time, from beginning to end of the Mass. Seeing that boy I had known in the darkest moment of my life, now recognized by the church as an example of sanctity, as a model of Christian life, was overwhelming, moving beyond all words. I knew him, I told anyone who would listen, to pilgrims, to strangers. I knew him personally. He touched me. He saved my life. He was my friend, not in the sense that he healed me physically with a miracle, although maybe yes, who can say with certainty, but he saved me spiritually, that's for sure. He saved me from despair, from total darkness, from believing that everything ended with death, that there was no meaning, that there was no hope. Today, in 2024, I have 2 wonderful children. Luca is 6. He's lively. intelligent, curious. Chiara is 4. She's sweet, sensitive, artistic. Both know who Blessed Carlo Acutis is. We have his image at home, hanging above the kitchen table. We pray together before it every evening before dinner. I've told them the story 1,000 times, of how a boy just a little older than them showed me what it means to have true faith, faith that doesn't waver even in the face of death. Every October 12th, the anniversary of his death and his birth to heaven, as Catholics say, I go to Assisi. I bring my children, my wife, and we pray together. I put my hand on the glass case where his body now rests, found intact years after burial, and I remember that moment in the hospital 18 years ago, when his hand touched mine. It was cold, it trembled, but it transmitted something infinitely warm, infinitely alive. It transmitted pure love, true hope, unshakable faith. It transmitted the certainty that we are not alone, never, that there is something beyond this brief and difficult life, something beautiful and infinite waiting for us. See you on the other side, my friend, he had told me. And I believe him. I believe with all my heart. One day, when it's my time, when my body finally gives out, I'll see him again. I'll hug him for real, not with the weak hands of 2 dying boys in a hospital, but with new bodies, healed, perfect, eternal, as faith promises. And I'll tell him again once more, thank you, Carlo. Thank you for that touch. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for showing me the way. My life is not perfect. I don't want to give that impression. I still have physical pain every day. I still have fears. I still have moments of doubt where I wonder if everything I believe in is true or just a consolatory illusion. But I'm no longer that desperate, angry, hopeless boy from 2006. I'm someone who has known grace, incarnated in a 15-year-old boy who, in his last goodbye to the world, decided to use his last forces to touch the hand of a stranger and tell him the most important words I've ever heard. You are not alone. And I'm not. I never was. Not even in the darkest, most painful, most desperate moments. Because Carlo was right about everything. There is more, much more than what we see with these limited eyes. And that more is infinite love. It's eternal light. It's life that never ends. Every time I watch my children play in the park, every time I hug my wife in the evening before sleeping, every time I wake up in the morning and give thanks for a new day, even if it hurts to get up, I think of him. I think of Blessed Carlo Acutis, of his impossible smile in pain, of his faith that didn't waver, of his last gesture toward a stranger who desperately needed hope. He touched my hand for a few seconds, but he touched much more and much more deeply. He touched my soul, he touched my heart, he touched my whole life. And that part of me that he touched will never die, can never die. Because grace, once truly received, is eternal. Like the butterfly that emerges from the caterpillar and flies away free. Like the soul that emerges from the corruptible body and flies toward home. Like faith that conquers fear and death itself. Carlo, wherever you are now, I know you see me. I know you pray for me as you prayed then in that hospital. And I pray for you every day, even though you're already in heaven, even though you're blessed, even though you don't need my poor prayers anymore. I pray that the whole world knows your incredible story, that other desperate kids like I was can feel your touch, even if only through your words, your life testimony, your luminous example. You were a friend for only 2 days, but you were a teacher, a guide, a light for my whole life. Your last goodbye to the world wasn't a sad ending, but a glorious beginning. The beginning of my true life, the one that goes beyond paralyzing fear, beyond physical pain, beyond death itself that no longer frightens. Thank you, Carlo. Forever, infinitely, thank you. If this story of Blessed Carlo Acutis and his last gesture of selfless love has touched your heart, pray for his intercession in your trials and difficulties. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like and activate the bell to receive other testimonies that illuminate our faith and remind us that truly we are never alone.